Joe Burrow, Bengals quarterback, coming back from the ACL tear. Will we see him? Will we not see him this weekend? Looks like maybe we will. Here's Burrow talking about his status earlier this week.
This was the plan the whole time. We just didn't want to tell you guys. So I'm excited to get out there and have a game type feel. I think it's important to, going into this last preseason game, to be as close as you can to having a game-like feel. And I'm going to be in the huddle during game one, so I need to be out there for the first play of this game, so I'm excited.
We'll see how long he plays. Remember, there have been concerns about not the physical recovery from last year's ACL tear that he suffered in Washington, and they were just back in Washington this past weekend for a preseason game. The mental challenge of putting that left knee out there again, knowing that there will be traffic around the knee, trusting the knee to be that front leg when it's time to set up and throw. And that's human. That's any injury that you have. That's just our nature to protect wounded parts of our bodies, and it's going to take him some time to get over that, Chris.
100%. I mean, to me, this is like one of the biggest things of this weekend. Like the one thing I definitely want to see the way Joe Burrow looks, because I know we've discussed a little bit, but probably haven't, really dove into this, is just the fact that, listen, the reports coming out of Cincinnati, to me, are a hair alarming. I mean, again, it's only been 8.5 months since he tore his ACL and his MCL. We talk about a lot, he's a slippery son of a gun. He is very dependent on that side-to-side movement and those type of things. And then early on in training camp, he's not practicing well. He doesn't look totally normal here. I mean, that does not totally look right. When I see little videos like this or pregame warm-ups last week in the preseason game and all those type of things. So I guess what I'm really saying is, man, I want him to be careful. Man, I want the Bengals to be careful. Because, Mike, this is with anything in life. When your mental party, he's not going to be 100% physically good, but when your mental part is not good, that's dangerous on an NFL football field. Because now you're going out of your first off, you're not playing, you're thinking too much, you're worried about your leg. Oh, wait, there's somebody around me, but wait, what's the coverage down there? Oh, man, I forgot. I was looking at the guy around my leg, those type of things. But then you're going so far out of your way to protect that limb or something that now you can endanger yourself in other ways just by you're protecting that. Now you might leave yourself vulnerable in other areas. And that's what I get worried about with Joe Burrow. I'm still a little angry about the way they put everything on him last year. And I think they need to be really careful here. And they need to evaluate how this looks, Mike. Because, listen, if it doesn't look good and he's still not comfortable after this little, experiment and, it doesn't go well, I might be one that would say, man, maybe we need to wait a few weeks before we throw him back out there. Maybe we don't throw him out there to week 3 or 4 until he really feels confident in that knee and can move around, and then his mental game can also just cut loose and be back to normal too. I don't know. You feel the same way I do there?
I'm reminded of the phrase, this is why we can't have nice things. And when you have a dysfunctional organization that finds itself in a situation like this, does it know how to properly handle it?
Right.
They stumbled into a great quarterback last year, a guy who was willing to come and join one of the most dysfunctional franchises in the National Football League, and they put him in harm's way excessively last year. He suffered the ACL tear. And I remember when it happened in November, we thought we're not going to see him start of the season.
Right.
The injury was too serious. It's not going to happen. Don't expect a full year from Joe Burrow. And then we start seeing the videos of the rehab, and this presumption begins to grow that Joe Burrow will be back week 1. And I remember kind of thinking okay, hey, all right, Adrian Peterson did it from Christmas Eve to week 1. Okay, all right, I guess. And then he's not on the PUP list to start training camp.
Nope.
Creates an expectation
that
he's good to go.
Right.
Maybe they should have had him on the PUP list for a little while if he wasn't going to play in the preseason, right? Oh, you're out. I mean, you can't practice with the team, although wink, wink, nod, nod. Tell that to Peyton Manning and the Colts when he was on the PUP list. So there are ways to get around that if you really want to. But it created that sense that he is fine. Holy crap, he's fine. Oh, he's got more arm strength this year.
Yeah,
that was one of the storylines when camp opened.
Right.
So you're this is the point where the dysfunctional nature of the Bengals comes through. And sorry, Bengals fans, for pointing out the obvious. You root for a dysfunctional team. But they put a bar too high for him.
Agreed.
Which only adds to the stress, which only adds to the strain, which only puts him in a spot where he feels like he has to go forward now, even if he's not ready to do it. It's kind of like the kid who's reluctant to get in the pool. They just shoved him in.
Yeah, no, they shoved him in. You're right. And, to your point with like that first report, hey, he's going to be full go in training camp, and hey, his arm looks more powerful. But right after that became, whoa, Joe Burrow hasn't looked very good in practice. You heard that from all the media outlets and things like that. And then he himself started making comments about how he doesn't feel comfortable and he doesn't feel normal. That's rare that a player like kind of lays it out there like that. When he said that, I went, man, that's less than like, man, I'm not 100%. That's like, I'm nowhere near 100%. That's when a player says that. Like, I'm not even close to, hitting on all cylinders and giving you my A-plus game. So that's where, this is a tough thing. The Bengals, though, their number one asset is Joe Burrow. It's the number one thing. They got to protect him. He is as valuable as the rest of the organization at this point. He really is. Sorry, that's just the way it is when you take the number one pick in the draft as a quarterback, and he's Joe freaking Burrow. They blew it last year by making it too much all about him, right? We're seeing Urban Meyer in Jacksonville go, really, Urban Meyer is basically what he was saying, and it sounds like he said to the telecast last week, like, I don't want a Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and just put the whole game on him because I know he'll try to win every game and put himself in vulnerable positions. And he said he talked to Joe Burrow. And what did Joe Burrow say to Urban Meyer? Run the ball and get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quickly, right? So, I guess what I'm saying here more than anything, sorry I went down that wormhole, is just like, Cincinnati, don't let one mistake lead into another mistake to where it really ruins your organization. You're not going to win the Super Bowl this year in Cincinnati. We know that. Nobody's expecting you to go to the playoffs, really. Not in that division. So play it slow. This is everything. He's the guy that is going to bring this organization to where they want to go. I believe that. But not if you throw him out here into the wolves again, and then he gets banged up and plays horrible and maybe gets another serious injury. So I think they need to be really careful because we see him do this magical stuff last year, and he's too fun to watch. And this is why he's not confident, because of this. This is his game, right? I mean, how many times did we break him down last year? We're like, man, look at this, slippery dude just bouncing around the pocket, making weird throws and things like that. And that's where I worried. I just want the Cincinnati Bengals to worry a little bit more.
And he was fearless, and
Yes.
It was infectious.
Right.
And I talked to him multiple times last year after wins, and he's not worried about getting banged around. He's not worried about getting hurt. And it almost was contagious where it caused me to think, well, maybe he's the exception. Maybe we don't need to worry about him.
Yeah.
Maybe he does know what's best. And, he didn't have the right level of self-awareness before he got injured. It seems like he's trying to get to the right level of self-awareness now. And there are forces within the organization that are pushing him into the pool. And here's why that's important. And this is really going to make Bengals fans happy. I don't think he has committed in his own mind that he's going to spend his entire career with the Bengals organization. I don't think he has. And I know that may sound sacrilegious when we're talking about any player who's under contract to a team. We're supposed to think they all want to stay exactly where they are for the rest of their careers. A comment was made to me during the offseason as it relates to Joe Burrow that if he was from Athens, Georgia, and not from Athens, Ohio, he would not have gone to the Bengals last year. The fact that he grew up in Ohio was the thing that kept him from making the Eli Manning, John Elway power play, that he did indeed consider it. And see, we were talking about back in those weeks before the draft in 2020 that Burrow was thinking about it. Well, then when he said, I'm all in, the Bengals fans are like, see, he never considered. Just because he resolved it for now in favor of I'm all in, that doesn't mean he didn't have doubts. He had doubts, and he, more accurately, has doubts. And it would be the height of naivete to think that how the team is shepherding him through this challenge of his professional life isn't going to be a factor in the decisions he makes about his career in the future.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you there. Yeah, you're right. I mean, if this continues to be somewhat of a disaster through his rookie contract and those type of things, yeah, he will be out of there, but I don't know. That's a long way down the road, certainly. But, to what you're talking about and everything, just to tie it, together a little bit, yeah, you're right. I mean, the Bengals have been one of the lesser teams in football. They have shown signs of dysfunction at times. And last year, we went through a phase, remember early in the year, where we were like, this is ridiculous the way he was getting hit. Remember the Baltimore game, I believe it was, early last year and some of that? I just went, this is abuse. This is human abuse what they're doing to him right here. Dropping back 40 times a game, not a run game. No run game, especially when Joe Mixon got hurt. And then, not an offensive line that can really protect him. Nobody noteworthy on that group to go like, oh, yeah, they're building something. And, hopefully they're in the right direction in that department. But, man, the Bengals, the goal, and the goal shouldn't even be worrying about winning games early on in the year. It should be protect Joe Burrow. That is for the greater good of the organization. And I know the coach isn't going to sell that to his players and everything like that. But
coach is on the hot seat.
But I know, and that's why.
Coach gotta win games.
That's why Joe Burrow's in this situation anyways, because he was feeling the hot seat last year. So they said, "Damn, let's ride this horse. Maybe he can bring us to the finish line." Well, yeah, you rode him too hard, and now he's got a messed up leg, and now you're going into a real hot seat year for sure, where if you don't produce, and you don't have a quarterback that's 100%. And that's where I think Mike Brown's got to get involved here a little bit. We have Mike Ryan, right? Our head trainer, medical expert here for NBC Sports. And he was a Giants trainer, head trainer for a long time, or the assistant trainer with the Giants, and then the head trainer with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Tom Coughlin, right? For 20 years. I mean, I've known him since I was a little kid. I had him on the podcast yesterday, Mike, and we talked about Joe Burrow specifically. And out of all the injuries we talked about, Wentz, Dak Prescott, who was the other one? Travis Etienne, somebody else, whatever, who the hell cares? But he said at the end of the day, the Joe Burrow injury was the one that he was most concerned about because of the things he was hearing, what was being said by the media, what Joe Burrow had said. And, yeah, that was the one he had his eye on, especially because of the ACL-MCL combination that really affects the mobility moving side to side. And he said in situations like this, hey, this is where the team's got to save the player to a degree. And he said he had a few instances in his career where, he knew a player was getting close to getting ready to play, but he knew his mental game wasn't right. And he had to go – he's got to defend the player and stick up for the player and go look at, hey, Tom Coughlin, hey, Bill Parcells, he's not ready. He's not ready. I'm sorry. Look, we've been filming his workouts. Look at it. Do you want to throw him out here on the field and really do this with the way he looks? Do you want to do that? And of course they're going to hem and haw and damn and all those type of things. But they come to their senses. And that's where I just look at Cincinnati and just go, man, they got to have some grown-ups in the room here to make sure they do the right thing, and I'm going to have my eyes all over this game. This is a Sunday game, right? We got coming up when they play the Dolphins. Sunday at 4 p.m. That will definitely be one of the highlights of the weekend for me is checking out Joe Burrow.
The Bengals have a well-earned reputation for being extremely careful with money, and that attitude manifests itself in all sorts of ways because – you don't have nice things if you're not paying competitive rates for the jobs that you need to ensure that your football team is as good as it can be, and then that number one overall pick falls into your lap, and you don't have the infrastructure to properly handle the number one overall pick. Just the mere fact that the Bengals don't like to pay coaches to not work for them, which causes them to keep coaches longer than they should, which may have caused them to keep Zach Taylor a year longer than they should, and now has become another ingredient in this toxic stew of push Joe Burrow into the pool when he's not ready to swim, because Zach Taylor needs Joe Burrow, or Zach Taylor's far more likely to get fired after this season. It just all goes together. And hey, Bengals fans, I didn't make your team dysfunctional. I'm just pointing out the dysfunctionality of it. That's the way it is. And, this is one of those conversations that if we didn't put this on the tee and talk it through, we may not have gotten here. And I have one last observation to make. I had a flashback when you were explaining the credentials and the experience of Mike Ryan to a time in the early 90s when he would have been treating an irritation to the foot of Jeff Hostetler and saying to him, this may sound crazy, but did someone put shaving cream in your shoes? So, anyway.
Yeah, he saw pain in the ass Chris Sims at an early age. So he knows all about me.
But this Burrow thing, look, we want Burrow to be successful. We want him to be as good as he can be, but sometimes you got to step back. You can't have a 1950s Junction Boys attitude when it comes to the health of your quarterback and say, get out there and play. Go put your uniform on and go work your way through it. That's the only way to get through it, is to go out there and play. And, Carson Palmer never really fully elaborated on all of his concerns with the Bengals organization, but I don't like where this is heading, Chris.
I hear you, Mike.
They better figure it out. They better have a moment of self-awareness, like the rare moment of self-awareness Joe Burrow's having, because an athlete's wired to say, let's go, let's go, let's go, and you have to protect the athlete from himself. Now, as you pointed out, with the trainer's obligation is protecting the athlete from the organization that is blind to the fact that maybe their guy isn't ready to go.
Yeah, no, exactly right. That's where, I hope that they can evaluate this and do it the right way. Yeah, it might not be the best thing for your team right at this moment, but, man, there's more at play than this moment, way more at play. And at this moment, too, like we're getting back to that, this is nobody's expecting much out of this moment. No, there's no expectations here. We're not looking at, as a AFC North, champion contender here. No way. Not in that division. The AFC stacked, as we have talked about. There's nothing, there's no expectations. So there's no reason to rush it. And, you just go through, most number one picks of all time, you gotta play a certain way to protect them early on in their careers, to save them from themselves, to make sure, you play a right way to protect them, even though it might not be the way you want to play, and it might not totally maximize 100% the best of your team, but you also got to realize, I'd like to play this way, but we can't protect the quarterback. We just can't. So we're going to change it up a little bit, and if we have to lose a game or two because of that, then so be it. And they didn't keep their eye on the big prize last year. That's where they went wrong. And now, like you said, Zach Taylor's on the hot seat. He's got to worry about himself. So, of course, he wants Joe Burrow out there. Of course he wants that. He's not comfortable with the backup quarterbacks they got there in Cincinnati to think they can do anything remotely near what Joe Burrow can do for that organization. So somebody's got to step in and, save that scenario too, where it's the head coaches and putting the player in a really tough spot. So this is something to
watch. They used the number 5 overall pick on receiver Jamar Chase and not tackle Penei Sewell, and there's an urgency in the organization to justify that selection. So when Jamar Chase starts dropping passes, again, this gets back to the amount of resources devoted to the broader support system in place for your players. They need to have a mechanism there to help Jamar Chase not press, not overdo it, not get too deep in his own thoughts about securing the football. Instead, they feel the same urgency he does because, damn it, if this guy doesn't stop dropping passes like he did 3 times on Friday night against Washington, we look like morons for not taking Penei Sewell to better protect our quarterback who's coming off of the ACL tear. Now, again, that second drop, that was kind of a hospital ball back in the old days. Right. The defensive back would have lit Jamar Chase up. But 3 drops, more drops on Sunday. We haven't heard about the drops this week, so apparently they've subsided. But it's the Bengals, and this is not the year to think that you need to press and you need to push because you got the Browns, the Ravens, and the Steelers in your division. You got a tough conference. Don't expect to get to the playoffs. Don't even try. Just try to get Joe Burrow to the point where next year you can maybe make a push.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.